My name is Anya Serafina, and for as long as I can remember, I've been drawn to the quiet interconnectedness of things. Not just how mechanisms fit together, or how systems flowed, but how human stories wove through every interaction, every transaction, every shared moment. I saw the vibrant threads of connection where others often saw only lines on a ledger. This inclination shaped my path, leading me, 18 months ago, to a role as a client liaison specialist at Veridian Consults, a firm celebrated for its data-driven insights and efficiency. Veridian Consults was a gleaming edifice of modern business in Havenwood, our city. Its headquarters, a tower of polished glass and steel, rose elegantly above the older, brick-laden districts. Inside, the atmosphere was one of hushed productivity, a symphony of clicking keyboards and soft, focused murmurs. The firm prided itself on its analytical prowess, its ability to distill complex business challenges into precise, actionable strategies. In many ways, it was a remarkable place, a crucible of brilliant minds. My supervisor, Corvus Thorne, embodied Veridian's core philosophy. She was a woman of undeniable brilliance, her mind a sharp, analytical instrument. Corvus could dissect a market trend, optimize a supply chain, or streamline an internal process with breathtaking speed and accuracy. Her desk was always immaculately organized, her presentations flawlessly logical, her time rigorously managed. For Corvus, efficiency was not just a metric, it was a creed. She saw human interaction as a variable, a potential source of unnecessary deviation from perfectly linear processes. From our very first meeting, it was clear she viewed my role, a client liaison, a bridge builder, as a somewhat inefficient, albeit necessary, appendage to the true machinery of the firm. Anya, she'd said during my orientation, her voice precise, almost clinical, your task is to maintain communication records, schedule follow-ups, and track satisfaction metrics. Keep it concise. Our clients appreciate our directness. But my heart, even then, knew a different truth. When I began reviewing the existing client files, I found them filled with dry communication logs, terse summaries, and impersonal notations. They read like robotic exchanges, devoid of any genuine human warmth. There was no personality, no indication that anyone at Veridian had ever taken the time to truly know the individuals who entrusted us with their thousands of Oreos each month. It struck me as a profound oversight, a fundamental misunderstanding of the delicate ecosystem of trust. So, gently and intuitively, I began to do something that felt radical within Veridian's meticulously structured environment. I started treating our clients not as data points or revenue streams, but as actual human beings, each with their own unique stories, passions, and quiet triumphs. I remember Alara Sterling, who owned a venerable textile company in the city's creative district. During a routine check-in call, she mentioned, almost as an aside, that her company was approaching its 15th anniversary, a milestone she planned to mark with a small, intimate gathering for her longtime artisans. I made a quiet note. 2 weeks later, I sent a personalized message, acknowledging the significance of her company's dedication to craft and asking about her hopes for its continued growth. Her surprise was palpable through the phone. She spoke for 20 minutes about her grandmother, who had founded the company, and the deep roots of her family's connection to the weaving looms. She ended up scheduling an additional consultation session, one that brought in a quiet sum of 12,000 Oreos in unexpected revenue, simply because she felt truly seen. Then there was Finian Ash, the owner of a mid-sized manufacturing company that produced specialized components for Havenwood's burgeoning tech industry. He was a man of quiet integrity, deeply committed to his employees. During a discussion about supply chain optimization, he briefly mentioned a new community outreach program his company was funding for local youth, expressing a deep personal satisfaction in giving back. I listened, truly listened, and later followed up with an email, asking about the initial success of the program and sharing a news article about a similar initiative I'd found inspiring. His response was immediate and heartfelt. He said he appreciated speaking with someone who remembered the nuances of his life beyond the boardroom. These weren't grand gestures or expensive gifts. I simply listened when people shared pieces of their lives, remembered what truly mattered to them, and followed up in ways that demonstrated a genuine care for their success, both professional and personal, beyond the immediate scope of their contracted services. I saw it as cultivating a garden, nurturing the delicate shoots of trust and mutual respect. Corvus, however, never quite understood the quiet alchemy I was practicing. She would walk past my workstation and see me typing what looked like casual conversation notes, my fingers moving gently across the keyboard, and I could feel her disapproval radiating across the sterile office space. During our monthly performance reviews, she would flip through my activity reports with a visible furrow in her brow, a quiet frustration etched on her precise features. "Anya," she would say, tapping her pen against her polished clipboard, "your call durations are consistently exceeding the optimal efficiency metrics. Why are you spending 45 minutes on interactions that our models suggest should take 15? I tried, gently, to explain. I spoke of how longer conversations were weaving stronger relationships, how clients were specifically requesting to work with me on new projects, how our client retention rate had quietly, steadily improved by a remarkable 37% since I had begun personalizing our approach. I showed her the growing list of referrals, the unexpected project expansions. But Corvus's mind operated in a different dimension of logic. She cared only for numbers that fit her predefined spreadsheet formulas, for metrics that could be quantified and streamlined. What she didn't realize, or perhaps couldn't perceive, was that I was cultivating something far more valuable than efficient call logs. I was becoming the beating heart of connection between Viridian Consults and the very individuals who breathe life into its business. Isolde Bloom, who owned a beloved chain of specialty bookstores, began calling me directly when she needed anything, bypassing Viridian's main inquiry line entirely. She shared her quiet joy in discovering rare, first-edition poetry collections and her gentle worries about her daughter, who was preparing for university. She said she felt seen, heard, and genuinely cared for, a refreshing experience in a world often dominated by transactional exchanges. Jasper Cross, whose catering business accounted for our third-largest monthly revenue, started recommending Viridian services to other prominent establishments in Havenwood, specifically because he enjoyed our conversations about his weekend visits to the local farmer's market and his grandmother's treasured recipe collection. He appreciated that I remembered his passion for ethical sourcing and his dedication to culinary artistry. Month after month, I watched our client satisfaction scores quietly climb, steadily, consistently, while Corvus remained singularly focused on efficiency metrics that, to my eyes, completely missed the profound human element at play. She was measuring how quickly we could process interactions, while I was nurturing the loyalty that would determine whether those interactions continued happening at all, whether they deepened into enduring partnerships. The quiet, almost imperceptible shift began to stir the waters at Viridian. The breaking point, the moment when the threads of my work became inescapably visible, arrived during our annual strategic planning meeting. Gideon Blackwood, our CEO, a man of measured words and discerning observation, was reviewing the firm's departmental performance reports. He paused, his gaze thoughtful, as he noted that client retention had reached an unprecedented all-time high. He specifically praised the renewed vibrancy in our client relationship management and gently suggested exploring the expansion of this personal touch strategy across other departments. I watched Corvus's expression from across the polished conference table. A subtle tension tightened her jaw as the quiet credit for improved retention landed on what she considered my inefficient, even unprofessional, methods. After the meeting concluded, she cornered me near the supply room, the scent of fresh paper and toner hanging in the air. Her voice was taut, controlled, but an undercurrent of something sharp, almost akin to anger, vibrated beneath her words. "Anya," she began, her eyes cool and assessing, "I don't know what kind of performance theater you're running, but this firm succeeds on professional excellence, on measurable outcomes, not on social hour conversations with our clients." She then assigned me a monumental task to complete a comprehensive relationship effectiveness review, a meticulous audit of every single client interaction over the past year. She demanded detailed documentation of every communication, every follow-up note, every relationship-building effort I had made. It was clearly intended as a punishment, a daunting mountain of bureaucratic busywork that would, she hoped, pull me away from the very relationship-building that was quietly driving our success. But I approached this audit project with the same quiet attention to personal detail that I brought to my client work. I saw it not as a punishment, but as an opportunity to articulate the invisible alchemy I had been performing. I created intricate records, far beyond simple summaries. I meticulously documented not just what communications had occurred, but how those conversations, those moments of genuine connection, had translated into tangible business outcomes. I chronicled the direct referrals that Jasper's catering business had generated, the expanded services that Finian's manufacturing company had purchased after our discussions about his community initiatives, the early contract renewal that Isolde's bookstores had signed because she trusted our partnership more deeply. I wove narratives around the data, showing the human pulse beneath the numbers. The finished audit was a testament, 53 meticulously documented pages of quiet proof. It demonstrated, beyond any statistical doubt, that personal attention to client relationships was directly responsible for over 200,000 Oreos in additional, unexpected revenue. Every casual conversation about weekend plans, every gentle inquiry about family celebrations, every shared moment of genuine connection had strengthened business ties in ways that our competitors, with their generic, purely professional approaches, simply could not replicate. I was deeply proud of that audit. It represented not just a year of diligent work, but a year of genuine connections, a quiet revolution that had transformed how Viridian Consults related to the very people who trusted us with their vital business. This quiet pride, however, made what unfolded next all the more profoundly devastating. Corvus called an all-hands department meeting on a crisp Tuesday morning in late autumn, the kind of morning where the air outside crackled with the promise of change. She announced that we needed to review our client relationship protocols and that my comprehensive audit would serve as a case study for discussion. A flicker of hope, a gentle expectation, stirred within me. I allowed myself to believe that perhaps, finally, she was ready to acknowledge the tangible value of personal attention, the profound impact of genuine connection. Instead, she directed me to display my meticulously compiled audit files on the main conference room screen, the vibrant tapestry of my year's work projected for the entire department to see. Then, with a chillingly detached precision, she began to dissect every personal note, every conversation detail, every sensitive relationship-building effort, not as evidence of success, but as proof of unprofessional boundary violations. This, she declared, her voice cold and cutting as she scrolled through months of careful documentation, is precisely the kind of inefficiency that undermines our established service standards. Personal chit-chat about pets and hobbies has absolutely no place in professional business communications. These extensive files, Anya, represent a complete failure to maintain appropriate professional distance and a disturbing departure from Viridian's core values of streamlined efficacy. A slow, creeping heat spread across my neck, burning despite the cool composure I tried to maintain. 23 pairs of eyes, my colleagues, my professional family for the past 18 months, watched as she systematically tore apart the work that had generated significant, measurable revenue for our firm. She was presenting my greatest professional accomplishment, the very essence of my contribution, as a cautionary tale, a blueprint for what not to do. But then, she did something that crossed a line I never, in my deepest moments of disillusionment, expected her to cross. She navigated through the digital folders, pulling up the master file containing my complete audit database, every client note, every relationship detail, every intimate conversation record that irrefutably proved how personal attention was driving our business success. Her finger, long and precise, moved toward the ominous delete option on the screen, while she continued her cold, detached lecture about the non-negotiable need for stringent professional standards. This entire approach, this methodology, is fundamentally flawed, she announced, her hand hovering, poised, over the deletion command. Beginning today, we will return to efficient, professional client communication protocols, meticulously aligned with Viridian's established ethos. And then, with a sharp, decisive click, she pressed delete. I watched, numb with disbelief, as a year of dedicated relationship building, of heartfelt connections, of quiet, profound contribution, simply vanished from the screen. 53 pages of meticulously documented connections that had quietly generated hundreds of thousands of Oreos in revenue, gone in one swift, vindictive moment. The silence in the conference room that followed was absolute, heavy with the collective gasp of unspoken shock, as everyone processed the irreversible act that had just unfolded. Corvus turned away from the blank screen with an expression of cold satisfaction, her posture radiating certainty. She clearly expected me to accept this public humiliation, to quietly internalize the lesson, and to begin rebuilding my work, my professional self, according to her rigid, unyielding methods. But she had made one crucial, fatal miscalculation. While she had destroyed my documentation, the meticulously compiled records of my efforts, she hadn't, and indeed couldn't, destroy the actual relationships I had so carefully cultivated. The clients who trusted me, who called me directly, who had shared personal details about their lives and their businesses, those delicate, yet resilient connections existed not in our computer files, not on a spreadsheet, but in their hearts and minds. And apparently, some of those connections, those dear clients, had been paying attention to the subtle currents within Viridian Consults far more carefully than anyone, especially Corvus, had ever realized. My phone, lying discreetly on the conference table beside my notepad, began to buzz before Corvus had even finished articulating her new, sterile efficiency protocols. The caller ID glowed with a name I recognized immediately: Lumina Insights. It was a consulting firm that had recently formed when 3 visionary former colleagues from a different industry, people I deeply respected, had left to start their own innovative venture. I knew them to be individuals who held a profound belief in the power of genuine connection. I gently excused myself from the conference room, my hands still faintly trembling from the quiet intensity of witnessing a year of my soul's work deliberately erased before my eyes. "Anya," said the warm, familiar voice of Alara Vance, one of the founders of Lumina Insights, on the other end of the line, her voice imbued with a quiet urgency. "We've been observing the recent shifts at Viridian, and we have a deep conviction that your approach to client engagement is the future. We believe in the profound value of the human heart in business." The conversation that unfolded in the hushed hallway outside the conference room would quietly, yet completely, change the trajectory of my professional life. Lumina Insights had been tracking Viridian's client retention improvements, had recognized the underlying shift, and had, with an intuitive grasp, discerned that I was the quiet architect of those burgeoning relationships. They had been planning to approach me for months, for an entirely different reason, but watching the live feed from the meeting, which, it turned out, was being inadvertently streamed due to a minor technical glitch that Corvus had overlooked in her haste. Watching Corvus so ruthlessly delete my audit files had solidified their conviction that the timing was now perfect. "Anya," Alara continued, her voice gentle yet utterly resolute, "we are prepared to offer you a foundational role as our Director of Client Flourishing. We envision a compensation package that reflects the true, transformative value you bring, an annual remuneration that would begin at 500,000 Oreos, well over double your current compensation. More importantly, we offer significant equity participation and complete, unfettered autonomy over our client relationship strategies. We believe, with every fiber of our being, that personal attention, genuine connection, and the nurturing of profound relationships are not just the future of business consulting, but its very soul. We want you, Anya, to build that future with us, to help us cultivate a thriving garden of authentic partnerships." 500,000 Oreos, a sum that felt almost ethereal, a testament to a value I had always quietly believed in, yet which had been so ruthlessly dismissed by Corvus. It was an offer to work for people who valued precisely what Corvus had so vehemently considered worthless inefficiency. But the most exquisitely beautiful part of their offer wasn't the monetary sum, immense as it was. "Anya," Alara's voice resonated with profound understanding, "we recognize that you cannot, and would not, bring proprietary information or client lists from Viridian Consults. We deeply respect your integrity. But we also know, fundamentally, that true client relationships are built on trust, on shared understanding, on personal connection, not on fleeting database files. If you choose to join us, and if clients, in their wisdom, choose to work with someone they genuinely trust, rather than remaining with an entity that treats them as mere transaction numbers, that, Anya, is simply the natural, organic consequence of deeply divergent business philosophies." I understood immediately, with a clarity that felt like sunlight breaking through clouds, what they were gently suggesting. They weren't asking me to engage in any unethical practices, to poach clients, or to violate any legal agreements. They were simply acknowledging a profound, unspoken truth, that if I chose to leave Viridian, to follow my own path, and if clients, in turn, decided they preferred to work with someone who remembered their aspirations, their challenges, their nuanced stories, or even the subtle nuances of their beloved companion's health issues, that choice would be entirely their own. It would be an act of profound, individual free will, a natural unfolding of consequences. When I walked back into the conference room, the air was still thick with the residue of Corvus's cold pronouncements. She was still lecturing about the paramount importance of professional efficiency standards, her voice a steady drone, while my former coworkers stared intently at their hands or at the blank pages of their notebooks, clearly uncomfortable. visibly discomfited by the raw display of power they had just witnessed. Corvus noticed my return, and her voice paused mid-sentence. "Anya," she said, her tone laced with a faint, still-present expectation of my quiet compliance, "do you have any questions about our new communication protocols? Perhaps a deeper understanding of the importance of maintaining professional distance?" I looked around the room, allowing my gaze to gently settle on each of the faces I had worked alongside for 18 months, faces now etched with a mixture of shock, discomfort, and, perhaps, a flicker of something akin to admiration. Then, I let my eyes drift to the blank screen where the vibrant tapestry of my audit, the very heart of my year's work, had so cruelly been displayed before its deliberate, public erasure. Finally, my gaze met Corvus's expectant, almost challenging expression. "Actually, Corvus," I said, my voice steady, remarkably calm, though my heart was a steady drumbeat within my chest. "I have something to announce." What happened next would quietly, yet profoundly, become one of the most significant moments of my professional journey. It wasn't about a grand, vengeful gesture. It was about a simple, unyielding truth. And the beauty of what unfolded wasn't that I had meticulously planned some elaborate scheme to inflict harm upon Corvus or Viridian Consults. The quiet, inherent beauty was that by deliberately, publicly deleting my meticulously compiled relationship-building work, Corvus had, with her own hands, removed the very foundation, the only thing that was truly anchoring Viridian's most significant clients to the firm. She had foolishly believed she was deleting inefficient documentation. What she had truly deleted was the vibrant, living architecture of customer loyalty, a delicate structure that had taken me a year of patient, heartfelt effort to build, and which, without its core, could, and would, simply dissipate in a matter of weeks. And when my phone had rung with that extraordinary offer from Lumina Insights, I had realized, with a profound clarity, that Corvus had, in that very act of destruction, simply handed me the key to the most elegant, most natural, and most deeply fulfilling consequence imaginable, simply allowing the inherent forces of human connection to unfold, while she, in her rigid, unyielding philosophy, watched everything she thought she controlled gently, irrevocably, slip away forever. "I am resigning from Viridian Consults," I said, my voice clear and steady, cutting through the heavy silence of the conference room. "Effective immediately. I will be joining Lumina Insights as their Director of Client Flourishing." The stillness that descended upon the room was absolute, profound. You could hear the faint hum of the air conditioning unit, the quiet click of a pen dropping from someone's stunned fingers. Corvus's expression, which moments before had been one of smug satisfaction, shifted rapidly through a spectrum of emotions, confusion, then disbelief, then something that looked undeniably like a nascent panic. Her composure, usually so unshakable, began to fray at the edges. You can't simply quit in the middle of a department meeting, Anya," she stammered, her voice higher than usual, a subtle tremor betraying her shock. "There are established protocols, notice requirements, transition procedures. This is highly unprofessional." "Actually, Corvus," I replied, my voice calm, pulling my phone from my pocket and gently displaying the unassailable contract offer I had just received, its terms clear and unambiguous. My employment agreement, like many standard professional contracts, allows for immediate resignation in cases of a hostile work environment or documented professional misconduct. Having my diligent, revenue-generating work publicly discredited and then deliberately deleted in front of all my colleagues, while simultaneously being publicly humiliated, qualifies unequivocally on both counts. Alden Blackwood, our CEO, who had been observing the entire interaction from his usual position at the back of the room, a silent, thoughtful presence, now stepped forward, his expression grave. "Anya, perhaps we should discuss this privately. Before any hasty, irreversible decisions are made. Viridian values its talent." But I was done with private discussions shrouded in polite euphemisms, done with diplomatic solutions that only served to maintain a broken status quo. Corvus had chosen to humiliate me publicly, believing it would break my spirit and reinforce her authority. So, it felt profoundly right that she, and indeed the entire department, would experience the immediate, public consequences of her actions. "There is nothing left to discuss, Mr. Blackwood," I said, my voice gentle but resolute. I began gathering the few personal items I had brought to the conference table, a small, symbolic act of detachment. "My decision is final. I will, of course, ensure all formal resignation paperwork is submitted within the hour, processed meticulously, as is my way. As I turned and walked towards the conference room exit, I could feel the collective gaze of 23 pairs of eyes following my every movement. Some of my former coworkers looked utterly shocked, their faces pale. Others, a quiet few, looked genuinely impressed, a silent acknowledgement passing between us. And a handful, I noticed, looked profoundly contemplative, as if reconsidering the very foundations of their own professional paths. Corvus called after me, her voice now unmistakably strained, higher than usual, edged with a dawning desperation. "You're making a colossal mistake, Anya. Lumina Insights is a nascent startup with no proven track record. You are foolishly throwing away established job security, a stable career, for some idealistic fantasy about relationship building being more important than professional standards." I paused at the doorway, my hand resting gently on the cool, polished brass handle. I turned back, allowing my gaze to settle calmly upon her. My voice was soft, carrying a quiet conviction that filled the lingering silence. "We shall see, Corvus," I said, a faint, almost imperceptible smile touching my lips. "We shall see which approach proves more valuable in the unfolding tapestry of the business world." Within 24 hours, my desk at Viridian Consults was cleared, my exit interviews completed with a quiet dignity, and I had seamlessly transitioned into my new role as Director of Client Flourishing at Lumina Insights. Their offices, housed in a charming, revitalized heritage building in Havenwood's burgeoning creative district, were smaller than Viridian's gleaming tower, but they buzzed with a vibrant, palpable energy. The air was thick with the excitement of building something truly innovative, something rooted in authenticity within the consulting space. More importantly, I was finally working alongside individuals who profoundly understood that true business relationships were cultivated through genuine human connection, through empathy and understanding, not through rigid efficiency metrics and standardized, impersonal communication protocols. It was a liberation, a profound sense of coming home to myself. But the real, deeply satisfying validation of my decision unfolded in the quiet weeks that followed, as I observed the natural, elegant consequences of Corvus's actions play out with devastating precision. I had not initiated contact with a single former Viridian client. I had not made a single sales call or sent any recruitment messages. My only action had been to simply update my professional profiles on various platforms to reflect my new position and to continue being the same person who had spent a year patiently cultivating authentic, meaningful relationships with individuals who deeply valued thoughtful, human-centered consulting services. The first call came early on a Thursday morning, just 3 days after I had officially started at Lumina Insights. It was Finian Ash, the owner of the manufacturing company, the man whose golden retrievers improved mobility I had inquired about during our routine check-ins. He called my new direct office number. "Anya," he said, his voice warm, laced with a genuine sincerity that instantly put me at ease. "I heard through the professional network that you've made a significant move to Lumina. I wanted to extend my sincere congratulations and, if it's not too presumptuous, inquire about your new company's capabilities. We are, to be frank, reevaluating our current consulting partnerships." We spoke for a full hour, our conversation flowing effortlessly, naturally. We discussed his business needs, the exciting new expansion plans for his community outreach programs, and yes, the remarkably improved mobility of his beloved retriever after the specialist treatment. By the end of our conversation, he had not only scheduled a comprehensive consultation meeting to discuss transitioning his account to Lumina Insights, but also shared a personal story about how my genuine interest had fostered a deeper trust than any service agreement could have. The second call arrived that very same afternoon, a quiet confirmation of the unfolding truth. It was Alara Sterling, whose textile company's anniversary I had celebrated, her voice carrying a note of thoughtful concern. She expressed a desire to discuss her upcoming project needs with someone who truly understood the subtle nuances of her business philosophy, someone who valued the artistry and heritage of her craft. "Anya," she confided, her voice a soft murmur, "I've been working with various consulting firms for over 12 years, and I must confess, you are the very first person who ever made me feel like my company, my legacy, truly mattered beyond the cold figures of an invoice amount. If you are genuinely offering the same personal attention, the same empathetic understanding at your new firm, then I am profoundly interested in making a change." By the end of my very first week at Lumina Insights, I had quietly received calls from 6 former Viridian clients. Not because I had solicited them, not because I had pursued them, but because they intuitively preferred to work with someone who treated them as unique individuals, as partners in a shared journey, rather than as mere account numbers on a spreadsheet. It was a testament to the quiet power of connection, a gentle affirmation of my beliefs. Meanwhile, back at Viridian Consults, Corvus Thorne was beginning, with a chilling clarity, to realize the true, devastating cost of what she had so confidently deleted. I heard about her growing panic through various, discreet mutual connections within the professional community. Apparently, she had attempted to reach out to major clients for routine check-ins, only to discover, to her profound dismay, that many of them were no longer interested in continuing their contracts. When she called Finian Ash to schedule his quarterly review, he politely but firmly informed her that his company was actively exploring other consulting options and would, with regret, not be renewing their annual agreement with Viridian. When she contacted Alara Sterling about upcoming project needs, Alara explained, with a quiet dignity, that she had found a consulting partner whose values and approach better aligned with her own, someone who understood the soul of her business. One by one, the cherished clients I had spent a year patiently, lovingly building relationships with were making the quiet, conscious choice to work with someone who remembered their personal details, understood their unique business challenges, and respected their individual communication preferences. Corvus had harbored the unwavering belief that client loyalty was intrinsically tied to Viridian's established brand reputation and its lauded service quality. She was now discovering, with a painful, undeniable clarity, that true client loyalty was, in its essence, tied to the profound personal connections that made individuals feel genuinely valued, deeply understood, and truly seen. During the third week after my departure, a call came that, for me, crystallized the full, devastating scope of Corvus's decision. It was Isolde Bloom, the owner of the beloved bookstore chain, the woman who had started calling me directly instead of navigating Viridian's impersonal main number. She wanted to share some information that she felt, with a quiet sense of obligation, I should know. "Anya," she began, her voice tinged with a blend of disbelief and amusement. "Corvus called me yesterday. She asked if there were any service issues that might explain why I was considering other consulting options. When I told her, quite directly, that I was simply following you to Lumina Insights because I valued our personal connection, our authentic partnership, she actually argued with me about it." Isolde let out a soft, incredulous laugh, a sound that held no malice, only a profound sense of bewilderment. "She told me, Anya, that professional relationships should be based solely on service quality and objective metrics, not on personal chit-chat about books and family. She then proceeded to lecture me, Anya, about how I was making an emotional decision instead of a sound business decision. Can you believe that? She was, in essence, attempting to dictate how I should choose my own consulting partners, how I should feel about my business relationships. That phone call revealed everything, explaining with a quiet precision why Corvus's rigid, unyielding approach was failing so spectacularly. Even when confronted with undeniable evidence that deeply personal relationships were, in fact, the driving force behind her clients' decisions, she simply could not, or would not, adjust her fundamental philosophy. She was still, stubbornly, attempting to convince people that abstract efficiency metrics mattered more than the tangible, human experience of feeling genuinely valued and profoundly understood. By the end of my first month at Lumina Insights, a remarkable 14 former Viridian clients had either seamlessly transitioned their accounts to our firm or initiated earnest conversations about potential future collaborations. These were not minor accounts. They collectively represented over 60% of Viridian Consult's annual revenue. I was not actively recruiting them. I was simply being available when they called, remembering the intricate details about their lives and businesses, and providing the same deeply personal attention and empathetic understanding that had so patiently built our relationships in the first place. Lumina Insights was thriving, blossoming beyond its most optimistic initial projections, while Viridian Consults was spiraling into the worst client retention crisis in its entire history. The elegant irony was not lost on me. The most satisfying part, for me, wasn't the significant increase in monetary compensation, nor the rapid professional ascent, though both were undeniably affirming. The deepest satisfaction stemmed from the quiet knowledge that Corvus had meticulously, unknowingly, orchestrated this entire situation herself, through her unwavering stubbornness, her inability to value what clients truly, intrinsically wanted. She could have, at any point, chosen a different path. She could have supported my relationship-building approach. She could have learned from the undeniable, measurable improvements in client retention rates and satisfaction scores. She could have recognized, with a thoughtful, open mind, that personal attention was generating tangible, quantifiable business results. Instead, she had chosen to publicly humiliate me and, in an act of profound symbolic destruction, delete work that represented hundreds of thousands of Oreos in hard-won client loyalty, apparently believing, with a baffling conviction, that her efficiency-focused philosophy was somehow more important than the actual, living evidence of what genuinely worked. 2 months after my departure, I heard through trusted professional networks that Alden Blackwood had called an emergency board meeting to address the spiraling client retention crisis. Viridian Consults was now facing the grim possibility of widespread layoffs, drastically reduced operations, and perhaps even the humbling prospect of being acquired by a larger, more traditional firm simply to ensure its survival amidst the catastrophic revenue loss. Corvus, who had been so supremely confident about her professional standards and the infallibility of her efficiency metrics, was now scrambling, desperately, to explain how the company had managed to hemorrhage most of its major accounts within a mere 8 weeks. According to discreet sources who were still working there, she had initially, stubbornly, tried to deflect blame by accusing me of somehow poisoning client relationships or violating ethical standards to steal accounts. But the timeline, the irrefutable sequence of events, simply did not support her increasingly desperate accusations. Clients were not leaving immediately after my resignation. They were making their choices after attempting to maintain relationships with Corvus's new, impersonal, efficiency-focused approach and discovering, unequivocally, that they preferred working with human beings who treated them as individuals, with empathy and respect. The board investigation that followed, conducted with a quiet thoroughness, revealed precisely what I could have told them months earlier, had they been willing to listen. Clients, at their core, choose consulting partners based on genuine trust, on the quality of human communication, and on the profound, simple feeling of being truly valued and deeply understood. They did not choose based on how quickly their calls were processed or how efficiently their concerns were categorized. Corvus had spent a year, relentlessly, dismissing relationship building as inefficient, social-hour conversation, and now she was confronting the painful, direct consequences of that rigid philosophy in the form of client defections that threatened the entire company's very existence. 3 months after my departure, the call came that, for me, brought a sense of quiet completion to this chapter of my professional life. It was Alden Blackwood, contacting me personally, his voice strained yet respectful. He wanted to discuss what he euphemistically termed a potential partnership opportunity. He wished to know if Lumina Insights would be interested in acquiring Viridian Consults' remaining client accounts and, perhaps, extending employment offers to some of their remaining, talented staff during what he described as a strategic restructuring process. The company that had once dismissed my relationship-building approach as inefficient garbage was now, in its desperation, hoping to sell its dwindling assets to the very firm that had been built entirely on the profound principles Corvus had so vehemently rejected. During our conversation, Alden, with a palpable sense of resignation, mentioned that they were also reevaluating leadership approaches in their client relations department. Reading between the lines, the unspoken truth was clear: Corvus's position was no longer secure. Her reign, built on a foundation of metrics rather than connection, was coming to an end. "I have to ask, Anya," he said toward the end of our conversation, a note of almost wistful longing in his voice. "What would it take, truly, to bring you back to Viridian as our Director of Client Flourishing? We are prepared to offer significant compensation increases, autonomy over your division, complete freedom to implement your relationship management strategies, anything you need." The irony, the profound, almost poetic symmetry of it all, was incredible. 3 months after watching my life's work, my meticulous audit files, get so cruelly deleted in front of all my colleagues, I was being actively recruited back to the very firm, the very department that had rejected my methods, to implement exactly the same approach, but now at a significantly higher salary, with complete authority. Yet, the thought of returning held no appeal for me. My path had shifted. My values had found a home. I had no interest in returning to work for people who had only learned to value my approach after enduring a profound crisis and losing millions of Oreos in revenue. The lessons had been hard-won, and they were not mine to reteach. I deeply appreciate the offer, Mr. Blackwood, I told him, my voice kind but firm, tinged with a quiet finality. And I truly wish you and Viridian Consults success in your restructuring. However, I am profoundly content and deeply aligned with my current position at Lumina Insights. We understood the inherent value of personal client relationships from day one, from our very inception, rather than having to learn it through the crucible of crisis and loss. My spirit, my purpose, truly flourishes here. 6 months after quietly departing from Viridian Consults, I was proudly promoted to senior partner at Lumina Insights, with substantial equity participation and the profound responsibility for expanding our client relationship philosophy across multiple new service lines. The clients who had so naturally followed me from Viridian became the vibrant, loyal foundation for our most successful year in company history. Meanwhile, Viridian Consults underwent the extensive strategic restructuring that Alden had so euphemistically described. They initiated significant layoffs, closed their largest office space, and ultimately, a year later, quietly merged with a larger, more traditional competitor who, ironically, continued to value efficiency metrics over genuine personal relationships, a cycle that would likely, inevitably, repeat itself. Corvus Thorne was not retained during the merger. I learned about her departure through the quiet murmurs of LinkedIn updates and subtle professional network conversations. According to former colleagues who had remained at Viridian until the merger, she had spent her final, desperate months at the firm trying, futilely, to rebuild client relationships using the very same impersonal, metrics-driven approach that had initially caused the crisis in the first place. She had apparently never truly understood, never truly internalized, that the problem was not her communication skills or her formidable technical knowledge. The profound, unyielding problem was her fundamental, deeply ingrained belief that business relationships should be purely transactional, devoid of the human heart. The last update I heard about her situation came from a mutual professional contact, a kind woman who mentioned, with a touch of sadness, that Corvus was experiencing considerable difficulty finding comparable positions within Havenwood's consulting landscape. Potential employers, understandably, expressed significant concerns about hiring someone whose management approach had so directly contributed to such a monumental revenue loss, especially in client-facing roles where genuine relationship building was now, universally, considered not just essential, but paramount. I felt no pleasure, no schadenfreude, in hearing about her career difficulties. My satisfaction, profound and deeply resonant, came instead from the quiet, undeniable knowledge that the very principles she had so publicly mocked, so vehemently rejected, were now recognized, celebrated, and deeply valued throughout our entire industry as absolutely essential for sustainable business success. Every forward-thinking consulting firm was now actively investing in personal client relationship strategies. Every reputable professional development program emphasized, with unwavering conviction, the profound importance of treating clients as unique individuals, as collaborative partners, rather than as mere transaction sources. Every truly successful consulting practice prioritized, unequivocally, exactly the human-centered approach that Corvus had so dismissively, so tragically, considered inefficient garbage. She had been profoundly wrong about what clients truly valued, fundamentally wrong about what truly drove business success, and tragically wrong about the inherent, irreplaceable importance of genuine personal connections in professional relationships. And her profound wrongness had been revealed not through elaborate schemes or calculated attacks, but simply through allowing natural consequences to unfold, gracefully and irrevocably, after she chose to publicly, vindicatively, destroy work that represented the very foundation of customer loyalty and human trust. Today, 2 years after watching my meticulous audit files, my very heart's work, get so cruelly deleted in front of 23 colleagues, I am leading the client flourishing division for one of the fastest growing, most respected consulting firms in our region. Our success is built entirely on the profound principle that Corvus so vehemently rejected, that business relationships do not merely thrive, but truly blossom, when people feel genuinely valued, deeply understood, and personally connected to their service providers, when they are treated as cherished human beings. Every single day, I have the privilege of working with clients who deeply appreciate having their birthdays remembered, their family updates acknowledged, and their business challenges addressed with genuine personal investment in their success, with empathy and collaborative spirit. And every day, I am quietly, profoundly reminded that the most powerful, most enduring validation against those who undervalue your contributions is simply proving them wrong through your continued, authentic success elsewhere. Corvus Thorne believed, with a rigid conviction, that she was deleting inefficient documentation when she destroyed my relationship-building work. What she had truly, unknowingly, deleted was the very foundation, the fragile yet powerful anchor that prevented her entire professional world from collapsing around her. Sometimes, the most satisfying, most profoundly elegant transformation is simply allowing people to experience the natural, unyielding consequences of their own deeply flawed decisions, while you, with quiet resolve and a spirit of true purpose, build something infinitely better, infinitely more authentic, somewhere else. The beauty is not in their fall, but in your flight.